Okay.
Okay. Hi, Ed Krassenstein here with Brian Krassenstein for episode 2 of Krassenstein Live. Today we have some interesting topics to talk about from Rachel Brand, who was the number 3 DOJ employee that stepped down last week, to Trump's new budget, which for 2019, which was just released. It's probably not going to be approved, but it has some interesting tidbits in it, which really give us some insight into what Trump's trying to do with his future budgets. Did you get a chance to read it, Brian?
Yeah, I did. I don't think this budget is actually gonna pass through Congress or anything. Usually, a president's budget does not typically signify what's gonna actually happen. Um, it's more for show, I would say.
Yeah, it's a way for Trump to sort of show his base that he's still fighting for what they elected him to do. I think that's more important to him at this point than actually coming up with a budget that will be approved. Uh, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there that I don't think the Republicans are gonna like, and there's also a lot of stuff in there which I know the Democrats aren't gonna like. Whether it's the cuts to Social Security, disability, or from the Republican standpoint, the way it inflates the national debt.
Yeah, I mean, throughout President Obama's 8 years, all that the Republicans would complain about is deficit spending and the national debt's increasing. And now that Trump's in charge and the Republicans are in charge, they don't seem to care at all about how much they spend, as long as it's what they want to spend it on, and as long as they cut spending on things that are helping the middle class and lower class.
Yeah, exactly. I have an outline here of some of the things that the Trump budget actually puts forth, and that includes $1.7 trillion in cuts to Social Security programs, food stamps, which is SNAP, Medicaid, and disability. There's also cuts to Medicare. And on top of this, he's also cutting $2.8 billion from the EPA. So there goes our environment.
Yeah, well, and I've also seen that he wants to cut NPR and PBS. If you don't know what those are, it's National Public Radio and the public broadcasting station. Some people might not realize how big of a deal that would be. It would really hurt the lower classes, some of the middle classes in Middle America. In fact, some of the areas in rural America, they rely heavily on PBS. In fact, sometimes their only TV stations are PBS stations. I was talking to somebody who said they have four TV stations, and everyone's PBS. So these are the less well-off areas, rural areas, and it's really going to hurt them if they did actually cut PBS and NPR. But I don't see that actually happening. It's just one of those things.
I agree. Something else I found interesting with his new budget is that it actually gives $22 billion toward building the Mexican wall. I think it was actually $18 billion for the wall, and then another $4 million towards detaining immigrants who are coming over the border. And while he's giving $22 million to this whole wall, he's also only giving $21 billion to other infrastructure, such as rebuilding our roads, railways, airports, and stuff like that. So basically, infrastructure is being split half between the wall, if you consider that infrastructure.
Well, what about his infrastructure plan? That's $200 billion or something.
This is for 2019.
Oh yeah.
So basically, the wall will cost $22 billion in 2019, and then there's another $21 billion allotted to the rest of infrastructure. So in his mind, the wall is just as important as rebuilding the country's infrastructure, which I think is absurd. We're so far behind other countries when it comes to infrastructure that I think we have a long ways to catch up.
I just want to point out what we're doing here today. We're going to use the hashtag Krassenstein Live, and you guys can ask questions on Twitter with that hashtag. I'll just type the hashtag because I know it can be difficult to spell our last name. Just use this hashtag, and I almost misspelled my name. Hold on a second. Use this hashtag and ask us questions, and we'll try to go back and forth and revisit these questions every so often.
Yeah, I actually saw a few interesting questions posted before we started here, so we can get to those a little later.
Yeah, something else about his budget is that we mentioned the whole deficit. We remember on the campaign trail, Trump said that he's going to totally eliminate the national debt, which is over $20 trillion within his 8 years in office. He's not going to have 8 years in office, but even if he did, there's no now they're projecting that there's going to be $27 trillion in debt by 2027. So he's nowhere near eliminating the national debt, which is another Trump lie to get votes.
Yeah, and it really surprises me how supportive most Republicans have been of increasing the national debt when over the past, since beginning of Republican history, I think they've been against increasing the debt. They've been against spending, and
it doesn't seem like they care about spending as long as spending on stuff they want, and as long as they're cutting key programs like Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security.
And disability, which I think is completely wrong. How can you do that? How can you say that somebody who's disabled shouldn't be able to earn a fair income? You know, it's just something I think is absurd. There's some more tidbits of information here I have about the budget, and so there's $214 billion in cuts to SNAP, which is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs, basically food stamps, over the next 10 years. And there's $554 billion in Medicare spending that's going to be cut over the next 10 years. And there's also $139 billion that Trump basically says is going to be cut over the next 10 years for improper payments by the government. He doesn't go into details as to what this actually means, and for all we know, it doesn't actually account for anything. It's just a bunch of...
Well, here's the thing. You've got the national debt at $20 trillion, expected to rise to $27 trillion by I think it was 2027, but I'm not 100% certain. What people forget is that the U.S. government's paying interest on that debt, and as the debt rises, it rises faster because the interest payment's going up. And at the same time, the higher the debt goes, the more inflation that's generally expected to happen, as there's more money in the economy. And once
he's basically running the country as he ran his casinos and other businesses, which ultimately went bankrupt.
Yeah, as the inflation rises, you're going to have to raise the interest rate to fight back the inflation, and then the debt's going to expand greater. So Trump's strategy right here is it's going to kill us.
It's overinflation. He's overinflating the economy. It's going to help in the short term, and then basically destroy us in the long run. Maybe when he's out of office, and it's going to make the next president look bad.
Yeah. Should we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, you know, there's this. I'm sure a lot of you guys heard about the plane that crashed in Russia. What was it, over the weekend or late last week?
Yeah, I think it was Saturday or no, it was yesterday. I'm not sure.
It was over the weekend, I believe. And there's been a lot of right-wing media news stories coming out pushing some conspiracy theories. There's one that I read this morning that said that a man named Sergei Milian was on the plane that crashed, and he was one of the 71 people who were killed. Sergei Milian, if you don't know, was one of the key components in the Steele dossier, and he had some strong connections to Christopher Steele. I also saw some people on the left tweeting this, and actually I retweeted one of these before I actually did some research on the matter. And basically what the right and some people on the left are saying is that this guy Sergei Milyan was using an alias Sergei Panchenko, and the Russian list of people who passed away on the flight included a man named Sergei Panchenko. So I did some research into that to see if this Milyan guy was actually Panchenko, and according to the Russian website that had the list of people who died, the birth date for Panchenko was 1973, and I did some research into Sergei Milyan, and he's only 38 years old, and if you're born in 1973, I think it was March of 1973, he would be 44, and that doesn't add up since Milyan's only 38, so that's another debunked conspiracy theory.
Yeah, what else is new?
Yeah.
The next thing I wanted to talk about was Rachel Brand, which is the Associate Attorney General who resigned last week. Her reason for resignation was that she got a job offer at Walmart, which she couldn't turn down. I think it was the head of the legal department at Walmart. And that's true. She did get a job offer at Walmart,
And I'm sure it was for a salary a lot higher than the whatever 185,000 or so that she's making with the government.
Yeah, but it turns out now that Business Insider is reporting that one of the key reasons she actually left was that she feared that she was going to be in charge of the Mueller investigation because she feared that Rosenstein was going to be fired by Trump, which she was next in line to take over as the one in charge of the investigation. She feared that if she was put in charge of the investigation, she didn't want the publicity that would have.
Well, I also read that she was very concerned over the fact that she wasn't being provided enough help because Trump hasn't been appointing everyone he should be, and the Department of Justice is a little bare at this time. So she was feeling a lot of pressure to do her job without any help or support.
Yeah, she was overwhelmed, and she feared what was coming next, and she just got out. And now if Rosenstein goes, it's going to be even a scarier situation in that we don't really know what.
We don't really know for sure who takes over. I think there's a lot of debate over who would be next in line if Rosenstein was to be fired.
There's different ways to go about it as well, because Trump could do a recess appointment, and then he could put anybody that's currently in his cabinet in the position without having to have Congress approve. He would need to do this when Congress is in recess for over 10 days, so that kind of makes things a little trickier. I don't think they're in recess until April, sometime in April.
That sounds right. Any other topics, or should we take some questions?
Well, we had the other piece of news today was Vanessa Trump, Donald Trump Jr.'s wife, received a letter in the mail with white powder.
Actually, the letter was directed to Donald Trump Jr., and Vanessa opened the letter. And supposedly she ingested the white powder that was in this letter and was taken to the hospital. There was also some, I think her as well as a few other people in the house were taken to the hospital for evaluation. It turns out that it was nothing. It wasn't
hazardous. It could have been baby powder for all we know. It wasn't anything serious. It just brings up a good point in that like these things are just ridiculous. Like you can express your opinion about Trump. You can tweet about it. You can talk about it. You can protest. But when you start attacking families and you start doing things like that, it's just ridiculous, and it makes us no better than those on the other side who are.
Yeah, you should never threaten somebody, whether it's physical threats or verbal threats or sending a white powder in the mail to scare somebody into thinking they might have ingested some poisonous substance.
And I see people posting now as a distraction, a publicity stunt, and who knows? It could have been anybody. It could have been Democrats. It could have been Republicans. But no matter who it was, it's just not the right way to go about anything. And we don't.
No one should endorse that. Yeah. It's just not right.
And not only is family off limits, but actions like that. If you send an envelope full of white powder to the president or vice president, That's not a good move either.
No, definitely not. Then you're kind of stooping to the level that we criticize others for stooping to.
Yeah, I'm gonna check the Krassenstein Live hashtag and just see what kind of questions we've got here. There's quite a few. Maybe I'll just kind of try and go down the list.
This was one I found interesting from Sunshine Clo 33. I don't know if you're watching right now, but you said, why do you think Christians have become so brainwashed by Trump? Clearly, he's not a godly man. Why are Fox News and the 700 Club so adamant about supporting Trump? I'd love to know if the televangelists are receiving money in return for their loyalty to Trump. I don't think there's money being received. I mean, not as far as I know.
Yeah, and I'll be the first one to tell you these. A lot of religious people that I talk to, they're actually anti-Trump as well. I mean, there's people on all sides, whether you're religious or not, who like Trump or don't like Trump. I think it's a little odd that Christians who call themselves Christians are kind of in support of a man who's kind of gone against everything they should believe in. But at the same time, they probably support some of his ideologies, and they kind of ignore the ideologies that don't suit their purpose.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at religion. Religion's something that kind of passes down from generation to generation, and so does politics. People are Christians because their parents and grandparents were. Not all the time, but that's one major reason why a lot of people follow a certain religion is because that's what they were taught when they were younger, and these people were also taught to follow a certain political party. If Trump didn't call himself a Republican, I doubt these Republicans wouldn't be supporting him. You know, if he ran as an independent, I don't think that Christians would be.
I think that the biggest thing is that he's anti-abortion, so they're going to cling to him no matter what. He could be anti-abortion and go murder someone, and they'll probably some of these people will probably stick with him. But like I said, there's a lot of Christians who I know that are against Trump for the right reasons, and that's probably a good portion of them. I mean, his approval ratings in the 30s, maybe 40s, if you believe some of those polls.
Absolutely. You know, I saw another poll that came out today. It showed Trump's approval rating among women, and it's fallen quite significantly. It's 29%. Down to 29% right now among women. So you know all this sexual harassment stuff and sexual abuse and domestic abuse is starting to get to his base. I think a lot of the women that made up his base are now fleeing. They realize he's just not who they want to represent them.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's see. Let's take another question here. Eddie's he's trying to log in with a laptop so he can do it more streamlined. But how is it possible that the Russian sanctions approved by the GOP after Trump signing were not carried out? Should and could the GOP have ordered Trump to do so? That's from Salt Bommel Hans on Twitter. And well, we discussed this yesterday. I think the sanctions. I think Trump's pretty much breaking the law right now, but nobody's going to hold him accountable. This is a law. This was signed into law, and the president has to. He did sign it. He has to implement them. But who's gonna oversee this? Who's gonna actually go ahead and make sure he's implementing the sanctions? There's not really anybody willing to do that. Republicans can try. I mean, Democrats can try, but without the majority, there's not a whole lot they can do. Let's see. Next question. Here's a question that we get asked a lot about our whether we were raided or not.
Yeah, raided by Homeland Security and investigated for wire fraud.
And so you might notice in a lot of our tweets we have what I consider to be bots. Some of them are probably not bots. constantly attack is posting screenshots of
an article that was written by an unknown news website online.
and they're asking, and it basically says that our homes are raided, we're facing wire fraud charges, blah, 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 blah. First, I want to start by saying parts of that article are actually true. In September of 2016, our house was raided by Homeland Security, and that was because of connections we had with an advertiser on one of our dozens of websites. We ran a bunch of internet forums related to virtual reality, 3D printing, making money online.
Yeah, the one website that was in question was a discussion forum similar to Facebook groups and Google groups, where people could talk about making money online, whether it's through stock market, through hedge funds, through multi-level marketing programs, and basically any way to make money online legally.
And basically, we sold ads to an international organization, as 17 different companies. We didn't know they were all one company. We sold ads to a bunch of these companies, and they were all connected, and they were all scamming people. And as soon as we found out that any of these companies were scams, we immediately removed the ads. But
well, it's also worth noting that these same exact companies were advertising on Google and Facebook as well.
Yeah, but basically, the government thought that we were the United States connection with this organization. And they quickly found out that we weren't, and that we were simply selling ads. And obviously, no charges were pressed, and we're fine. We did have to give up some assets, which were obtained through sale of ads to this organization, and we did that simply because the legal fees would have outweighed what we would have had to give up.
It was a fair deal. It was very stressful. Our families were put through a lot of stress. We were left in the dark for close to a year as to what was being investigated. So you can imagine how scary that could be. But everything worked out fine. There's no charges pressed. There's not going to be any charges pressed. We reached a settlement with the government.
Civil settlement.
There's never any criminal charges being brought.
So next time you see those links, that's the truth. You can do background checks on us. We don't have criminal backgrounds. I don't think we ever I think I had maybe one speeding ticket in my life.
All right, so should we move on to the next question? Let me see here. How many hours a week do you guys spend in the gym to get those biceps?
Go to the gym like 4 or 5 days a week for an hour.
Next question. How's it? You read this Russian sanction one, right? Can the blue wave happen without a mellowing out on the far left agenda? Don't you think the U.S. is predominantly Christian and will push back against an extra liberal agenda? I don't think you can say that liberals aren't Christian. I think you can be liberal and Christian, and I think you will see a lot of candidates who are liberal and Christian in the upcoming elections. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, I mean, Hillary Clinton was Christian. Barack Obama was Christian. I mean, it's not exclusive to Republicans.
I don't think that's going to be a deterrent. I think basically these Christians have to decide what's best for the country.
And I mean, the fact that liberals are anti-abortion, I think, is the biggest.
They're not anti-abortion. They're pro-choice.
No, I'm sorry. Liberals are okay with abortion
in some cases, but you can't say that. I mean, there's a certain time in a pregnancy where liberals would say no, that's too late to have an abortion.
Yeah, exactly.
And depending on the circumstances, I think that's a view that Republicans try to push. Is that
they try to divide based on
exactly. And I think you can definitely be Christian and be liberal at the same time. There's not a line that can be drawn there.
I agree.
Yeah, like one viewer says everyone is anti-abortion. At a certain point in time, yes, I agree. Everyone is anti-abortion.
But there's different circumstances that.
Yes, I agree.
That I think that should be the woman's decision and open to them. Are there any other questions there?
I don't.
Why do you feel the need to comment on everything Trump tweets? Takes away from your message, somebody said.
I comment with my opinion when Trump tweets. I don't think it takes away from my message because that is my message. You'll notice I don't respond to a lot of Trump's tweets. Those are the ones that I don't feel I have a good response to. There's some tweets that he makes where I say, "Yep, I agree," and I don't respond to those.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Trump blocked us for giving our opinion on his tweets is when those are official. That's an official line of communication to the American public. I think that's a disgrace. I mean, he's our president, as whether we like it or not, he's our president right now, and the fact that we can't read what he's posting, his official words, or reply to them, I think that's just wrong. Anti-American, anti-First Amendment. It's just wrong. It's like, if you're the president of the United States, you should have thicker skin and be able to deal with the critics, and he clearly can't. Could you imagine Barack Obama blocking people on Twitter for not agreeing with him?
Yeah, I agree with what Brian said. I'll read the next question. If you wanted to retweet tweet it again, then and send me a link so I can do it.
What's that?
The video link here so other people can. And there's another question. What is the likelihood of a full-on Trump indictment should Mueller be fired? That's a good question, and there's a lot of debate as to whether Trump can even be indicted. You could turn your sound off from your phone.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, the likelihood of Trump being indicted should Mueller be fired. I think that should be just as likely as if Mueller isn't fired. But there's a lot of debate as to whether constitutionally Mueller or anyone can actually indict a sitting president. It goes back and forth, and until it's actually tried and a court has to make that decision, we're not going to know for sure. If he's not indicted, it would be up to Congress to impeach him. And right now, I just don't see that happening until a new Congress takes over in 2019. Hopefully, after a blue wave that puts more Democrats in office. I think that's really the main.
Yeah, I can't see the GOP voting for impeachment. Basically, the House would have to have a majority who votes for impeachment, and then the Senate would need to convict him with a 2/3 vote, which right now is not likely with the way everything's set up, and the House majority and Senate majority in Republican hands.
All right, let's see. Take some more questions here.
Yeah, and as we said earlier, if you have a question for us, tweet with the hashtag Krassenstein Live, and we'll try and answer your questions. I'm also looking at the chat section on the side here, but it's a little hard for me to look at that and concentrate on everything at the same time.
So. All right, here's a question. Do you guys want to walk back the theory that Carter Page was a double agent? After looking at it hard, I just can't see it. I wouldn't say we'll walk it back because it was just a theory, and we said it when we made that post. We said that it's just a theory, and it could be a bogus theory. We basically said it's just a possibility. We thought how the percentage of that possibility I can't even say, but we're not gonna walk. There's still oddities there with Carter Page. And there's some things that...
I mean, it's kind of impossible to not say it's odd. The guy's just odd. And something's not right there, whether he's a double agent or whether he's just incredibly stupid but smart at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah, there's odd things, and Carter Page has a PhD, and yet he seems so incredibly stupid when you hear him talk, and the actions he takes, such as not having an attorney. There's just things there that don't seem right.
Yeah, no, I think that's all we can really say right now. We might not ever know what's up. They might not ever tell us what's going on with Carter Page. Somebody asked how come we don't get discouraged after everything that's going on, and I'm pretty optimistic. I think that America will emerge from this stronger. It's going to be a rough road ahead, but I think that in the long run, I think that we're going to learn from this, and there'll be new rules and regulations and laws implemented to make sure that a Donald Trump doesn't happen again. And I do think that 2018, the elections 2018 are looking really strong for Democrats, and I think that Democrats have a great chance of winning the House and the Senate. And at that point, you have Adam Schiff. He's going to go after Trump at all angles. You have probably the Senate, and if Gillibrand isn't running for president, if she's still in the Senate, I guarantee you she's going to go after Trump for the sexual assault allegations from the 19 women. So Trump, if Democrats win the House and Senate, Trump's going to be in big trouble.
There's a lot of lawsuits that are going to, I think we'll see come out too against Trump.
Yeah, probably in the next few months. I think there's going to be some lawsuits, some ethics violations, emoluments. I think that there's going to be a lot going on, and it's going to be hard for Trump to try and get out of them. I think.
Yeah, well, we got to realize that these cases all take a long time to put together. So, I think the second half of this year we're going to see some of these some of these court cases come to light, and Trump might even have to testify under oath, which would certainly be interesting. We'll see. We'll have to see how that all unfolds. I think.
Yeah. Somebody's asked if I think Adam Schiff's going to run for president. I don't think he will in 2020. I think he's probably going to use the House advantage that the Democrats will likely get to really go after Trump and maybe some of the Republicans who are seemingly working with Trump to kind of brush the Russia thing under the rug.
It's hard. I think it's hard for a congressman to run. Typically, you see senators and governors. I think when it comes to congressmen like Adam Schiff, I think Democrats need somebody who's slightly more moderate than Schiff. I think Schiff is. I think he's a little bit too much. His actions against Trump are going to basically pull him away from every single Trump voter out there. Whereas I think we need somebody who's a little more moderate.
Yeah, but I don't know if I can see many Trump voters voting Democrat anyway. I think Democrats have to rely on getting people to the polls and not trying to convert voters.
That's a good point. And that's definitely a good point. You need to vote. We all need to vote. And a lot of us are going to wait till the last minute and realize we're not registered to vote. So make sure you're registered to vote for the elections.
Yeah, there's plenty of resources online. You check to see if you're registered. And
if you voted for the presidential elections, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're registered for these elections either. So make sure you're registered before it's too late.
Yeah, the biggest way you're going to protest Trump is to vote. You can get out with signs and protest and stop traffic, but in the long run, the best thing you can do is vote, and that's the best way to protest Trump. Vote for Democrats.
Well, and also, a lot of people say they don't vote because one vote doesn't matter. There's that excuse. And when it comes to the presidential elections, yeah, the president usually wins by hundreds of thousands of votes. But when it comes down to the House elections, there's some really, really close races because you got to figure that your districts or the populations are very small. So every vote definitely counts, and I think that's very important to remember. And it's not about just voting yourself, it's about having your family and friends vote as well. People who haven't voted in the past but are not supportive of Trump, you should definitely consider basically asking them to vote and encouraging it.
Yeah, and I'll be the first one to say I was one of those people who used to think, oh, my vote doesn't count. Why am I voting? And I didn't vote for so long, but don't have that mindset. I was wrong, and you got to vote.
I've never voted for the congressional election, so this is gonna be my first time.
And this is more this election coming up is arguably more important than the presidential election, just because this is the way to get Trump out within a year or two rather than 4 years.
Yeah, and I think there's a few Senate seats up for grabs too, but very few. But even those, the Senate elections are going to be
the Democrats could win the Senate. It's very close, so gotta vote.
Yeah, big election coming up.
Trying to check the questions. I don't think there's anymore. I'm glad I see a lot of people saying they're going to vote. That's important.
Yeah, don't forget, tweet hashtag Krassenstein Live if you have any questions. I think I've gone through most of them on here.
There's the last few days have been quite quiet news-wise. You have the Porter thing, and the fact that Kelly seemingly knew that Porter beat his wives and urged him to stay, and then he denied the whole thing. But sources close to the White House or within the White House are telling the media that Kelly has been telling them to basically lie about what he said, and if that happened in any other administration, I'm pretty sure the chief of staff would have been forced to resign by now. But this isn't any other administration.
All right, here's a comment from a hater, I would say. They say, "You're a pathological liar and an overwhelming majority of your accounts are fake propaganda accounts. Trump's new approval rating is proof that nobody gives a damn about hypocritical, lying snowflakes like yourself. We see through your lies." All right, first of all, we don't have any more accounts than my account, Brian's account, and the account of IR.net.
Yeah.
Those are our 3
Well,
accounts.
for the record, I did have an account or two way in the past that I don't use.
Yeah, I did too, but it hasn't been used in probably 2 years or something. So there's not multiple accounts. We don't have bots, Trump's approval ratings, I don't believe the approval ratings that I see coming from... I don't believe the approval ratings that I see coming from the right-wing websites like Breitbart and Fox News. It's really hard for me to believe some of these. When you see the more mainstream polls, his approval ratings are still very low. I keep seeing, Trump's approval ratings have passed Obama's approval ratings at this time in their presidency.
Yeah, if you take the highest Trump and compare them to the lowest Obama, then maybe a few of them have. But
yeah, there's right-leaning polls and left-leaning polls and more moderate polls. And probably if you took the most right-leaning polls, they're probably pretty close. But if you take the average, Obama's way ahead at this point in time.
Yeah.
Especially among women. And a new question came in. Somebody asked, who's Trump's White House mole?
I mean, there's so many people working in the White House, it's impossible to really say. I think that Bannon was probably leaking when he was there, but he's no longer there. I mean, it could be anyone. It could be Kellyanne Conway, for all we know.
I'm guessing it's somebody in the lower ranks, somebody who doesn't
somebody
like Trump.
Somebody you don't... Not somebody in the lower ranks, but somebody that isn't mainstream, like somebody like a Porter, like somebody in that one of those positions
that you don't hear about or you probably even know about.
I'm not
your
saying
guess
it's
is
Porter.
as good.
I'm not
good
saying
as
it's Porter because I'm sure it wasn't Porter, but it's somebody probably that you're not familiar with.
Let's see if there's any breaking news.
Somebody brought up ISIS, and I commend the fact that ISIS is shrinking in Iraq and Afghanistan. I don't know if Trump is going about it the right way. I think he's probably killing a lot of civilians that we're not hearing about, but he's doing a decent job against ISIS. But that started at the end of Obama's term, so you really can't give Trump all the credit there. And like I said, who knows how many civilians are dying because of this.
Let's see here. I see Trump's controversial pick to run the 2020 census has withdrawn his application, I guess.
Thomas Brunel.
Thomas Brunel is, according to Mother Jones, Thomas Brunel drew criticism for his lack of government experience and his defense of Republican restricting efforts.
Do you think that Trump will get subpoenaed by Mueller's grand jury? I actually do think that if he continues to refuse to interview with Mueller, I think that Mueller's going to subpoena him, and at that point, things are going to get very interesting. I think that could spark a move on Rosenstein, or I think that an indictment of one of his family members, like Don Jr. or Kushner, could spark the same thing.
I don't think Trump's going to testify without a subpoena.
No, I don't either.
He's going to give an interview to Mueller without a subpoena, so it's basically going to force Mueller's hand, I believe. Whether Trump tries to fire Rosenstein prior to a subpoena being issued or right after a subpoena being issued, I don't know. But he might realize that a subpoena is coming, and that could basically make him fire Rosenstein. And
yeah, definitely.
Could harm the Mueller investigation.
Somebody asked if we think that Trump's going to be nailed for tax evasion. I don't doubt that he may have evaded taxes, but I don't think that's what they're going for right now. Different agencies in the government handle different situations, and I'm guessing that Mueller's not looking at tax evasion right now. He's probably looking at more.
He's looking at the money laundering and the
crimes that are probably worse than tax evasion. I'm thinking that
not that tax evasion's not bad, but we also have to keep in mind that there's an investigation going on in the state of New York by the Attorney General there, and Mueller's been cooperating with them. And what they say is that a state crime is not pardonable. So if the Attorney General in New York can get Trump on crimes related to money laundering or whatever else they can come up with, they could prosecute Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Donald Trump without having the issue of pardons come into effect.
And I could see that. My guess is that they're working in conjunction with New York. Eric Schneiderman's the Attorney General in New York, and I'm guessing that they're trying to get a case together against Trump Jr. and Kushner at the same time that Mueller's investigating them. And if Mueller indicts them and then Trump pardons them, I'm guessing that Schneiderman will probably come down the line closely after that and probably also indict Trump and Kushner, Trump Jr. and Kushner. I think that's kind of an insurance policy. Yeah, that insurance policy phrase again. But I mean, if you think that the president's going to pardon his family members just because they're family members, that's very, very, very possible. But I think that Mueller's smart enough to have a go-around.
Yeah, I agree with Brian here. There's another question from Queen Ema on Twitter using hashtag Krassenstein Live. Do you think that money laundering will be prosecuted? I think money laundering will eventually be one of the charges brought, if charges are brought. Again, we go back to the whole idea of, can the sitting president be indicted? So if he is indicted, I think money laundering would play a role.
We don't know any more than you guys, but all the evidence out there right now makes it seem like he probably was doing money laundering. First of all, money laundering pretty much goes with any crime. If you're committing any kind of crime, whether it's tax evasion or wire fraud or anything, they can tack money laundering on in a second just because you're moving those fraudulent funds to another account. That's money laundering. If you're trying to disguise it or hide it.
If there's any Russian money coming to Trump, it's going to have been laundered. If Trump was dealing with Russia in any way to illegally bring Russian money into the United States, then it's probably money laundering. There's a lot of ways. I mean, money laundering is usually a account that gets added on to other charges. Guys, are we breaking up? Because is our video flickering and breaking up, or do we look okay?
All right. So another question I saw here was somebody saying that. I'm sorry. Hold on a second. It looks like we're frozen here, so I'm just trying to see what's happening.
Yeah, I think.
Are we good?
Are we good, or are we breaking up for you guys?
It seems like things might have cleared up.
Okay.
All right, so another question I saw was regarding Devin Nunes and his website, his news site that he was apparently
we are
running.
breaking up. See, I think we have the we got to turn down this.
It looks like it's going okay now.
Okay.
So Devin Nunes was his campaign, or those backing him were apparently running a fake news website in which they pretty much backed everything that Devin Nunes said. And my thoughts on that, it's kind of pathetic. The site went down soon after the media began pointing it out. They claimed that they were being attacked, like a DDoS attack, but I'm thinking maybe they pulled it down just because they the media uncovered what was going on.
Yeah, you know, all this talk about fake news from Trump and the GOP and Devin Nunes actually has a fake news website that he's running in order to push bogus stories from the right. And, you know, it's just hypocritical. I mean, I think that's the best way to explain it. It's hypocritical.
Yeah, no, I agree. Any other questions?
Oh yeah, there's a few more.
Yeah, I'm glad his site went down as well. If it was a DDoS attack, I don't support that, of course. But that kind of stuff really bothers me, just because people don't realize who's running that site, and that can hurt people because of what they're posting.
Another question from user KittyCat172 KittyCat asks, when do you think Mueller will come out with the next indictment? We here in Australia are getting concerned with China's posturing in the region and suspicious that Trump will do a bloody nose strike on North Korea. Your vote in U.S. affects us too. You know, your guess is as good as mine. I'm hoping that there'll be another indictment soon, but we never know. And I think Robert Mueller is doing what he thinks is best for the case. You don't want to come out with an indictment too soon when you think there might be other evidence, and you just need to do it slowly and flip as many people as you can in order to get more indictments. So I think, you know, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be in 2 months from now. It's really hard to say.
Yeah, and there's some good news with North Korea in that it seems like the South Korean president is going to meet with Kim Jong-un, and Vice President Mike Pence said that he would be willing to also talk with them. The Trump administration would. So maybe they're kind of settling down on that, and there's going to be less rhetoric coming from the president. But that seems to be a positive, at least. At least we know that maybe a nuclear war won't start because the president gets attacked verbally by Kim Jong-un.
There's another comment from Alaska Jur. And he says, Trump has used more illegal drone strikes and killed more civilians since he has been in office versus Obama in 8 years in office. I'm not sure the details. There is an article he posted here. I'm not sure the truth or the details of that, but I would believe it.
Yeah, and that was kind of going on when I was talking about ISIS earlier and how we've made progress on ISIS. I think that's great, but I don't know at what cost it has been. He seems to be bombing a lot, and when you do that in congested areas or cities, you're definitely going to be hurting and killing a lot of innocent civilians, and that's making us know better.
There's a whole idea of being cautious versus wiping out as many enemies as possible, and you know the.
And do we have a right to be bombing them? Of course, we have a right to be bombing ISIS, but we also have an obligation to be responsible and not kill people who have nothing to do with ISIS.
Yeah, there's women and children being killed. That somebody's son and daughter and mom and dad. You know, it's heartbreaking to see that.
Somebody asked, do you guys ever get threatened outside of Twitter? No, I mean,
we've had a few phone calls, but it's just basically
most of the people are online who are threatening us, and that's because they do it anonymously. And like Eddie said, he'd gotten a couple phone calls, but I mean, most of these people are people that...
I actually changed my number, and the phone number that I have now is actually just sitting there, and I just let it ring. It's not, nobody actually gets through to that anymore.
Thoughts on Mike Pence sitting during the Olympics? Somebody asked, and
I don't really have a problem with that. He I know he sat when they brought out the flag unifying both South and North Korea, and it's slightly disrespectful, but you can't say, okay, NFL football players can kneel during our anthem, but Mike Pence should stand. That's his right, and I don't think
it's his right, but he's representing our country, and that was one of our key allies in the region, South Korea. Albeit they're combined with North Korea in the Olympics, but you would think he would have had more respect.
It is interesting because that flag represented unity between North and South Korea, and isn't that the whole idea that Trump and Pence want is unity, and then cutting out the nuclear weapons. I think unity would be great for America, but Pence has his reasons, and it's hard to really look into his mind there.
Yeah, and Mike Pence doesn't seem very connected to the White House. I mean, most documents don't even have his name on it. It seems like he's kind of just being sent to sporting events to have a face there, and he's not. Whereas Joe Biden seemed to be very involved in the White House. He seemed to be a key advisor to Obama. He was involved in many of the decisions that Obama made. It doesn't seem like Mike Pence really has much of a say. And this man could eventually be president. I mean, I hope it's not the case, but...
Yeah, well, Mike Pence, it's like he sounds presidential when he talks, but as soon as he starts talking about his ideas, it goes over my head. Excuse me.
Mike Pence doesn't seem to have much connection with reality, somebody said. Yeah, I kind of tend to agree there. And Mike Pence is scary, yes. I agree that Mike Pence is scary. I think that
would you say he's as scary as Donald Trump?
No.
He's not as scary as Donald Trump.
People believe that Mike Pence is scary because he can get stuff done, maybe. He can work with Republicans better. But you got to remember that if Democrats win the House and the Senate, or just the House or the Senate in 2018, and if Trump's impeached and somehow Pence is put in as president because of that, he's not going to have Congress on his side, and all his ridiculous ideas and anti-gay and anti-whatever ideas are not going to be so easy to push through, and he'd probably have no agenda at all that actually gets implemented. He'd be a lame duck president for 2 years.
Here's another comment from Alaska Jar on Twitter. He says, Pence sitting during the show of unity between North Korea and South Korea is his right to free speech. We support that right. His speech says that he doesn't support the reunification of North and South. That's what is alarming. That's absolutely right, and I couldn't say it better myself. He has a right to free speech, but that free speech shows that he doesn't support the unity of the two countries. And why he doesn't support that, I'm not really sure.
Somebody asked if Manafort was the person that recommended Pence. And yes, Paul Manafort was the campaign chairman, and he recommended Mike Pence to Donald Trump as vice president. And that in itself is kind of alarming, because this guy is indicted now for crimes. And
you wonder how much Pence knew, and how much, why isn't his name on all these transition records, even though he was the head of the transition team? He was kind of mysterious.
He was the head of the transition team, and supposedly he doesn't know anything that happened in the transition.
Well, his name isn't on a lot of the documents. Do you think that was something that was changed, or do you think that was just didn't really have much to do with the transition?
I think that. Well, if you guys remember at the time, Trump wanted Chris Christie as his vice president, his running mate, and Paul Manafort really pushed Mike Pence. There was a whole airplane ordeal where the plane was said to have had some issue, and they had to stay over that night, and then that's when Pence was introduced, something crazy like that. And Manafort really pushed Pence on Trump, and Trump eventually conceded and chose Pence, and it's alarming that why did Manafort push him so hard? Like what was the reason? And I think Robert Mueller's probably looking into that, and Robert Mueller will find out. And if Pence was involved in something illegal, then he's going to have an issue as well.
Absolutely, and keep in mind that vice president can be indicted, so that should be interesting to see as well. We might see Pence indicted before we actually see anything done about Trump.
Well, yeah, and it's all going to be the strategy that they take. Mueller's not partisan, so he's going to probably just do what he thinks is best. But will Trump and Pence both, like what's going to happen? Will Pence be indicted while Trump's being impeached? If they're both thrown out of the office at the same time, then it goes to Speaker of the House, who in 2019 it might be Nancy Pelosi or whoever the Democrats choose.
That's a good point, because Paul Ryan's going to be gone regardless. He said he's not running for re-election.
But if say Trump's impeached, then Pence is president, and then Pence is indicted shortly after. Whoever Pence could have put in as vice president at that time, he's going to be president next. So whether Congress would actually vote through a Pence appointee while they think he might be indicted, who knows? And it'll still go to the House of Representatives, but we really don't know. And right now, there's so many options on the table as to how this is going to play out if Trump's impeached.
Yes, absolutely. I saw another comment. Somebody was asking about ICE and how can they justify deporting military vets. And you can't really blame ICE agents for this, I don't think. They're just doing their job, and their job is to the President of the United States. So you can't really blame them.
Well, I mean, a few of them are, well, at least one of them I saw stepping down.
Yeah, there's some stepping down. But at the same time, these people have to provide for their families. So it's really hard to hold them accountable when they're just doing the job that they're being told. I'm sure a lot of them are having issues with it.
Somebody said that Eric Holder said on Rachel Maddow's show that he believes a sitting president can be indicted, and a lot of legal scholars say the same thing.
It depends who you ask. People on the right say they can't, and people on the left say they can. So it's what it comes down to is he has to be indicted, and then the court has to decide if that indictment can be upheld.
Well, here's the thing. It's whether Mueller will try to indict Trump. He can definitely try to, but he might not do that because he doesn't want to. Basically, it will go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will decide if he can actually indict a sitting president. And back when Clinton was impeached, there was a lot of opinions written by legal scholars saying that he can't be indicted. He can't be indicted as president. So the Supreme Court might use some of those written reports or written.
Well, and an indictment is very easy to get. If Mueller wanted to indict him, he could probably do it. It's just convincing a grand jury. But when you present to the grand jury, there's no defense. So it's basically Mueller's case with no defense. And if Mueller wants to indict them, there's a saying, you can indict a ham sandwich, because it's just 99.9% of indictments that are put forth by a prosecutor actually go through, because a grand jury usually supports that prosecutor. So it's really up to Mueller, and then whether that indictment holds true and is legally upheld.
And is Mueller going to want it to go to the Supreme Court and possibly lose? And then that's going to delegitimize what he's doing. It might be best for him to just issue a report to Congress and the American people, and then hope that Congress acts, which until January of 2019 they probably won't.
Which I don't think it's going to happen before then anyway. I really don't.
Yeah, it's going to be close.
Like, do you really think Mueller would do that, or would he wait till the new Congress? Don't you think Mueller's going to wait for?
I think it's going to depend on whether GOP congressmen are involved, and whether he thinks. We all know that Devin Nunes was involved. He was on the transition team. He was in the meeting in which Mike Pence. Not Mike Pence. Mike Flynn was plotting to kidnap the Turkish opposition leader. Devin Nunes even admitted to speaking with Mike Flynn several times a day during that time period. So Devin Nunes knows something.
That's why he's overreacting and trying to cover this investigation up so much.
He knows that his name's probably in Mueller's.
He knows he's going to be either forced to testify or he's going to be indicted on something.
Yeah. Otherwise, you don't act the way he's acting. Just like you don't act the way President Trump's acting if you're innocent. You let the investigation play out, just like Hillary Clinton did.
Yeah. There's somebody that's asking about the emoluments clause. And whether or not it's going to be enforced. I think we're going to see some attempts to enforce it this year, probably closer to the middle of the year.
There's actually a case ongoing, and it is moving forward. I just don't know exactly where it's headed right now.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see some stuff happen as far as that goes. And I think, I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but they'll have to have some sort of resolution.
And somebody posted RICO. I'm guessing they're talking about their racketeering statutes, which would could envelope Trump and Nunes and everybody else involved. And basically, what RICO statutes say is that
it's racketeering, right?
Yeah, racketeering. Basically, anybody involved in this entire criminal conspiracy would be able to be charged as if they committed every crime within that conspiracy.
So that's huge. If you're a Devin Nunes and you're brought up on a RICO charge, I mean,
he would be responsible for everything Trump did, everything Trump Jr. did.
Well, and not only Trump, but also what the Russians did, because they could conceivably bring some of the Russian agents, the Russian people
as co-conspirators
into the same investigation. Trump and Nunes could be all in that same RICO charge, even though the Russians aren't ever going to be actually brought to America to be prosecuted because they just can't do that. But
there's no extradition.
But the co-conspirators here in the U.S. can be brought on those same charges, which is huge, and they could result in some huge penalties for whoever's brought into a RICO.
Yeah, I mean everybody involved in the racketeering case could be facing the same amount of time in prison. If 20 crimes were committed by everybody in the group, they can all be charged for all 20 crimes and could be facing 10 life sentences for all that we know. And that's how you get people to flip, and that's probably that could be what Mueller's working on.
That could be what the charges being brought against Paul Manafort. You know, I mean, I definitely imagine that the charges being brought against Manafort are huge, and Mueller's trying to get him to flip right now.
And Gates probably has flipped, it seems, so we're probably going to have more pressure on Manafort. I'm not saying they need Manafort to flip in order to get Trump on all these possible money laundering and other crimes, but Manafort flipping would be a huge payoff.
Don't you think that if Gates flipped, that kind of makes Manafort in a position?
Kind of forces him to.
He needs to flip because Gates knows a lot about Manafort. They were basically partners for so much of this, and if Gates flipped, that means he's ready to turn over information on Manafort. And if that's the case, Manafort, he either has to flip or he's going to be facing a huge uphill battle.
I mean, Gates probably has all the documents that Manafort has. So if Manafort was hiding documents or burnt or shredded documents, Gates probably has access to the same documents. And if he flips, Manafort's going to be...
Here's an interesting question from 172 Kitty Cat on Twitter. The question is, if Trump is impeached and removed, can he be criminally charged after that? I would assume once he's impeached...
That's what would happen. Basically, an indictment would wait until Trump is no longer president, so they can indict him. But they would wait until after an impeachment and after he's thrown out of office, and his last day in office, he could be arrested and indicted on whatever crimes.
And you also have to keep in mind that Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and Jared Kushner can all be indicted. And, I mean, an indictment of them, you would think, would have a huge impact on Trump on a personal level.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's when, who knows if the Rosenstein or Mueller will be fired.
Well, that's when the whole pardon thing comes into account too, unless it's a state crime and put forth by the Attorney General in New York, which I find interesting. Trump's trying to put a new judge in office in New York who's basically on his side, which could have huge ramifications if charges are actually brought
in New York
State.
Yeah, somebody said he could have already pardoned himself by the time he's out of office, and then they call us idiots. Yes, he could have, and that's why Mueller is likely working with Eric Schneiderman in the state of New York to kind of go after Trump from a state level where he cannot pardon himself.
Mueller's a smart guy, and he's the guy you want in charge of this investigation. We don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
But the fact he's working with Eric Schneiderman's pretty telling, you know? Any more questions, guys?
Yeah, we'll probably wrap it up here in a little bit unless there's some questions. They are going to have Obama and Hillary in military tribunals. Okay. I guarantee you that Hillary's not going to jail.
I guarantee Obama's not going to jail. And not because of deep state, just because they're innocent of any crime.
Yeah, and let me say, if they actually committed crimes, then yeah, throw them in prison. But it's not happening. They've already Clinton's been investigated so much already that if something was unkosher, they would have found it.
Somebody asked if we think Mueller already has enough on Trump. Who knows? It's impossible to tell. I would assume that he has enough to get obstruction of justice charges. Other than that,
yeah, I mean, we don't know anything. We don't know anything. You guys don't. The only thing that we read a lot and we look into these things, but we don't have any sources that are telling us this or that.
We don't have any extra insight, so we don't know. Nobody knows what Mueller has except Mueller and his team, and his team's not leaking anything, so nobody knows.
Somebody said, "Are these guys regularly scheduled? Can we have advance notice of our next live feed?" And
we haven't scheduled anything yet. We're kind of just doing them once or twice a week, and I think we'll eventually come up with a schedule.
Yeah, typically it's around this time of day, 2 or 3 o'clock. You can follow us on Periscope, which then you would get a notification that we're live. Also, all the videos are made available on both YouTube and on Periscope, so you can go back and rewatch them or watch them for the first time.
Yeah, and you can also follow us on Twitter. I'll type in our Twitter handles in the chat box over here. You want to click in the box.
Yeah, and whenever we're live, we usually make a tweet that we're live.
I'm at Ed Krassen, and Brian here, he is at Krassenstein. I'm typing them in the box here. So be sure to follow us, and you can see when we're live there. But also follow us on Periscope, because then you get a notification when we're live, and you just turn it on your phone. If you don't have the Periscope app yet, you can download that. It can make it easier to view.
And somebody just asked who would win a boxing match, and that's me.
And that's not true. We used to actually have one-handed boxing matches, because I'm left-handed and he's right-handed, and
we only had one pair.
We'd get one glove and put the other hand behind our backs, and I'd win every time.
Okay.
There's another question. Recap the impeachment process. So basically, the impeachment process would be brought in the House. The House has to vote to impeach, and that requires a majority vote in the House. And once that majority vote's put forth, the process moves to the Senate, and the Senate basically acts as the jurors, and they vote whether they think the president is guilty, president or whoever is guilty or not. But instead of being beyond a reasonable doubt, instead of being 100% of the jurors needing to say beyond a reasonable doubt that the party being impeached is guilty, they need 60% of the senators, which is 60 senators, to vote in favor of throwing the impeached party out of office.
They need 2/3.
2/3.
So 66 it would be. 66 senators.
Which is hard because, I mean, it's not...
But you have to realize that in the impeachment hearing, there would be so much laid out that even the Republican senators would have to pretty much vote how they see it. You're not, the Senate is a lot. Republican senators seem a lot more professional.
Well, the Senate's more moderate because you got to figure every senator represents his entire state, whereas congressmen only represent a small district, and those districts are some districts are so left or so right that these congressmen are side so much on the left and so much on the right, whereas senators represent an entire state, and when it comes down to states, you want to be more moderate. So the senators, if they see evidence of crimes and they feel that that evidence is overwhelming, they're going to vote to kick the party out of office just because they know that the majority of their state would want to see that happen.
They would know that their election hopes of the future are diminished greatly if all the evidence points to a crime and they don't convict that crime.
Exactly. All right, well, one more tweet here. Let's see.
Somebody asked if we think that we'll have to wait till after the election for the impeachment process, and yes, I think that the elections in November, the Congress and the House get put in place in January. So it would be January 2019, and I think that if it's Democrats in either house, it's going to... Well, if Democrats in the House, you're going to have an impeachment almost immediately. If it's both the House and the Senate, you're going to have an impeachment and likely conviction. It happens pretty fast. If you go back to the whole Clinton impeachment, the impeachment happened, and then the Senate hearings took place pretty close after that. And as you know, the Senate almost convicted Clinton for lying about.
Well, you got to keep in mind that the House can impeach whenever they want. They or try to impeach or put it up for a vote whenever they want, and that's happened several times already.
Yeah,
but it's going to be ultimately a referral from Robert Mueller to the House that would initiate a real impeachment where it's something that's actually solid. So I don't think Mueller would be smart, and I don't think he will issue a referral until after the new Congress is appointed, just because you don't really know exactly how long things would take from there. And with a new Congress, you get
he would probably, if he had it ready, he would do it as soon as he has it ready. He's not going to play politics. And even if the House doesn't vote to impeach after Mueller's report is issued, they can still re-vote again as soon as a new Congress is signed in, is brought in.
Yeah, that's very true.
So even if one Congress doesn't vote for impeachment, the next Congress can. How long will it take for Mueller? We don't know. It's probably going to be several more months. Whether it's before or after the election, I don't know. It's going to be tricky if it's very close to the election, because you're going to have Republicans claiming that Mueller's a partisan hack, even though he's a Republican.
Yeah, you're going to have that no matter what. Yeah, that's never going to end.
But if it's close to the election, they're going to say that he's trying to influence the elections. So he could hold off.
I really think it's going to be held off. I just don't think... I don't think Mueller wants to be political. I think he's going to wait. That doesn't mean we won't see other indictments before then, though.
Which I think is very likely that we're going to start seeing indictments probably in the next... I don't know. I mean, it's totally a guess, but I would say I would be surprised if we don't see another indictment or two within the next couple of months, 3 months.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I was actually expecting to see some sooner, but yeah, you don't know what Mueller's doing. All right, should we close this out?
Yeah, I think it's a good time to close it up. We'll probably have another live feed, maybe later this week, or maybe next week.
Yeah, maybe Wednesday or sometime Wednesday, Friday, or next week.
We don't have a schedule right now, so it's hard to say, but
Keep an eye out.
yeah, if you want to rewatch it, just go to our YouTube channel. Just search Ed and Brian Krassenstein on YouTube, or you can just rewatch it on Periscope if you have a Periscope account, I guess. Remember to follow us on Periscope because that way you're provided notice every time we go live, and that would help you catch our next live feed.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. It was fun.